Thank you very much for coming. I thought I'd just kick off with a few sort of preliminary comments and then throw it over to you, and happy to take any questions that you've got. I mean, the first thing I want to say is that I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and day 4, but really pleased with a very warm and very friendly welcome from everybody, and I've really enjoyed the first 4 days. It's been busy with the sort of ceremony and the pomp of Monday and the swearing-in ceremony, but I've been getting out and about to talk to people. So I've had a session with the Premier, Leader of the Opposition, other MLAs, and with different civil service departments, some very good meetings with France, our Deputy Governor, and I'm very much still in listen mode. I want to listen and hear the views of everybody across society, and really looking forward to going to visit the Sister Islands tomorrow and Saturday. So that will be a really important thing to do in my first week. The second thing is just to say that my impressions are extremely positive, and as I said in the speech to the Legislative Assembly, I think the Cayman Islands have a huge amount to be proud of. Your world-class financial services industry, high quality tourism sector, you're highly talented people, very sound public finance, you've got strong economic growth, you have excellent law enforcement agencies. France and Manderson, our Deputy Governor, who did an excellent job as acting governor, runs a strong civil service with very competent people. And you have a judiciary which is highly respected internationally, and that underpins a lot of the success of the Cayman Islands. You're also a beacon in the region in terms of some of the things you're doing, for example, around child safeguarding, where you're leading the way in the region, and you've supported other territories in the region on crisis and disaster, which again is a hugely positive thing. So very positive first impressions. I think thirdly, the sort of thing I would want to emphasize is that I see my role very much as strengthening even further the UK and Cayman Islands relationship. I know I arrive at a time when there have been some tensions in that relationship, but I think it's really important that together we work collaboratively and cherish the relationship and nurture the relationship and make it even stronger. Just one example of how that can be so strong is overnight you may have seen that the OECD has changed its rules on using ODA budgets to help territories going through natural disasters. Last year in the serious hurricanes, the UK wasn't able to use its ODA budget to help territories in disasters, but the UK has persuaded the OECD and other countries to change its rules. So in the future we will be able to use ODA budgets in disaster relief, which will include the Cayman Islands. So I think that's a really good example of how working together we can do even more. So I will pause there. And I'm very happy to take questions. Yeah.
Andrew Harris with Radio Cayman News.
Yes.
Now you're serving currently as the interim governor, very limited amount of time. What are your top priorities?
Well, I'm here for a minimum of 6 to 9 months, but I very much hope it will be longer than that. I think in terms of priorities, security clearly will be something which is uppermost on my mind, and the peace and security of the islands is absolutely fundamental. I also think safeguarding the financial services industry and the tourism sector, I would like to play a contribution working with the government on that. My background coming from China, where I ran an 800-strong network, a lot of work on trade and investment. So if I can make a contribution supporting the Cayman Islands' efforts on trade and investment as it looks to expand in the Far East, upholding the rights of everybody on the territory, I think that's an important priority, and ensuring that the Cayman Islands is disaster ready. I think we have to, a lot of great work goes on in that area, but making sure that we're improving continuously and ready should anything happen is really important. Yes, hi.
Morning, Governor. Wendy from Cayman News Service.
Yeah.
I'd like to go straight into some of the sticky issues that we've got at the moment. As Governor, good governance is an important factor, and also, given your background in trading in China, you might have some thoughts. You're probably well aware that there is a polarised situation regarding the government's desire to build a cruise berthing facility. Government is currently using public cash to promote against the people's initiated referendum. I'd like your thoughts on that and where you see that as being good governance. Secondly, do you have any thoughts about Czech? I know one of your predecessors, no, it wasn't your predecessor.
Any thoughts about?
Czech, which is one of the final three that is being considered to do the project if it goes ahead. And your general thoughts about the idea of a referendum, that the government seems to have gone, no, we're not doing it, yet there is clearly a desire amongst the people for it. So I know it's a bit of a difficult one, but I just want to get where you feel, especially because of the China connection as well.
And of course, this is day 4, and I've said that I'm here to listen and to learn. So I want to have further conversations about that, and this is primarily a matter for the government. And I mean, I think I have full trust in people like the Auditor General. So I think at the moment, all I will say is that I am talking to people in the government about that, but on day 4, I can't really add any more on that at the moment.
In your speech, you said, and I quote, "I'll fight your corner as a friend to the best of my ability and to help London understand your point of view." What efforts will you make, and are the members of your office, on the issue of public registries and what our Premier has dubbed constitutional overreach?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think it's a really important role of the Governor to understand the views of the territory and be able to reflect that back to London, and that's a fundamental role. I recognise that there have been sort of tensions in the relationship over beneficial ownership. I want to help safeguard the financial services industry of the Cayman Islands, which is absolutely fundamental to the economy. So I see my role as helping support the government in dealing with some of these issues which are arising internationally, and I'll be focused very much on that. In terms of constitutional change, again, on that, I think I'm very aware that that the government is looking at that and maybe coming forward with some proposals. The Foreign Office in London has already said that it would be willing to listen and is open to receiving ideas. The Foreign Office has also said that it does believe at the moment the current balance of responsibilities in the Constitution is about right, and it thinks the 2012 White Paper sets out a clear and fair balance of responsibilities, but we are open to discussion and open to ideas.
James with Cayman Compass. You mentioned protecting financial services as part of your role. I think the government and certain aspects of the industry here see the UK as one of the threats to financial services. How will you manage that division, I suppose, and how do you see any way out of this mandate for public beneficial ownership registries, given that it's written into UK legislation? Is there any talking around that at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer on that is that it's important that Cayman Islands is able to compete and is able to compete fairly. I mean, the Cayman Islands has the right to set its own rates of taxation and regulation. Clearly, there are international efforts to go further on transparency and trying to ensure there's no misuse of financial services. I think our role here is to try and work with those initiatives, be on the front foot, be proactive, and tackle those risks with confidence. So, on the beneficial registers, it's important that everybody moves at the same speed, so that when they come in, everybody else is doing it. There's a global standard. So I think the UK's role is to promote that and push that, so that we can everybody can move together, and I think that's really important.
I mean, the issue is that the UK wants Cayman to move ahead of the global standard, and I think what the politicians here are saying is that they don't want to do it till it is a global standard.
And I think the UK's position, to be clear, is actually that it wants a global standard. So in terms of looking at the timescales for when that happens, the UK's view is it's very important that others, which includes the Crown dependencies, it includes other countries, move at the same speed. So we want that to happen before a territory like the Cayman Islands has to introduce a beneficial register. So there is time to talk this through and work out the best way of doing it, which protects the financial services industry, which is what we all want to do.
How does that fit though with an order in council by 2020, which is what's part of the legislation?
Well, that's still under discussion, and we're having discussions on that at the moment. I think that there will be a big meeting in London in December, the Joint Ministerial Council, and I think that will be a subject that we will go into in great detail there, in order to try and find a way forward that everybody is happy with. But I emphasise again, it's really important, and the UK has been clear on this, that it should be a global standard with everybody moving at the same speed.
Well, do you know whether the FCO will be moving to try and get the, well, no, it's not the FCO, the government in the UK will be moving on the Crown dependencies to adopt it, because they obviously were not part of the legislation?
They were not part of the legislation, but
the UK could say to them.
But I simply repeat what I said, which is that the Foreign Office, that the policy is that we want to move everybody to move together towards a global standard. That I think is pretty clear.
Okay. Can I move on to gay marriage?
Yeah.
Obviously you've said rights quite a few times. It's very, very topical. We have a case going through the courts at the moment. I know you're not mean to comment on that specifically, but obviously you might want to comment on the fact that the government has opted to again use public money to fight it. So what's your position? Do you see that you are in a position to be able to persuade our current government that we need to introduce some form of marriage equality, even if it isn't, if it's called something else, whatever?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I do recognise that this is a hugely sensitive area, and an important principle of the overseas territories is that there is maximum self-government. That's what the UK wants for the territories. But in terms of rights for LGBT people, my view is that everybody is equal and everybody should have the same rights. And I think, as my two predecessors have said, they supported civil partnerships, and I also think civil partnerships is important. Clearly, this case is before the court, so I think we do have to wait until we see how the court handles that before we can really move any further forward.
If I could just press on that issue a little more. Just moments ago, you just said, that you're keen on upholding the rights of every citizen in the territory. Your predecessor, Mr. Chowdhury, stated that while the UK was keen to see a similar statement to see the rights of everyone being upheld, this was a matter for the Cayman Islands government to address. Is that still your stance, that although you're looking to uphold the rights of everyone, this is a matter for the government? So how do you intend to uphold the rights of these citizens that are technically second-class citizens in their own country?
Well, I think that it's a matter, at the moment it's a matter for the courts. There's a case before the courts, so we have to wait and see what happens after that. But what I think is important, certainly for from my perspective, is rule of law, and that we have to comply with the law. So I think we need to wait and see what the outcome of that case is.
So that, sorry, so that means again, you're comfortable with them spending public money fighting something that obviously will only in a matter of time be law?
Well, that's something I don't have any information on at the moment, so I can't really comment on that today.
You're interested in upholding the rights of all the citizens, but you probably know that there's a lot of people here who work on work permits and are not regarded as citizens. Are you interested in upholding their rights too?
Yes, of course. I think we're talking about the rights of everybody who lives in the Cayman Islands.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also, from your speech here, and I quote again, you announced that the UK and the Cayman Islands government were in talks and hopefully trying to secure a second helicopter to help bolster the air operations unit.
Yeah.
Are there any other Easter eggs, any other details that you might be able to provide us at this stage? Anything else that we...
I mean, I can't really sort of provide any more details than what I said in the speech on Monday, but I think this is a really positive development, because to have a second helicopter will make a huge difference to law enforcement capacity, and it will make a huge difference if there are sort of disasters and crises in the region in terms of the ability to support other territories. So I think this is a really positive story, and again another really good example of where the UK and Cayman Islands working together really can make very effective progress.
Governor, if I just may, I
Yeah.
say on that details of that budget, there's sort of the final discussions and negotiations are going on at the moment, so it's likely that details will emerge from that quite soon, but obviously we can't talk about it at the moment because they're still being discussed, so it will come out soon. I think Wendy wrote something on this, and that's the sort of current position, but we'll give you more detail shortly when we can.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Yes, James.
A few times you've mentioned security.
Yeah.
The National Security Council has been a body that's sort of met on and off,
Yeah.
I guess. It's been various levels of activation depending on the governor's interests.
Yeah.
How do you intend to use that body and in terms of security in general? How do you see your role in a practical sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a really important body. I know it's reconstituted recently, and I fully intend to continue that, and I think it plays an important role because it brings everybody together who has a contribution to make in that area, and collectively we can handle situations better by having a body like that. So I fully support the NSC, and will want to see regular meetings of it.
You've met with the police commissioner?
I haven't yet, because I think he's currently off island. I met his deputy, but I will be having a meeting with him very soon.
So, I mean, do you have an early handle on what the sort of crime and security issues that you think will be important?
I've had some briefings on that, and I mean, I think, in general, if you think of the region as a whole, the picture here is a relatively good one. It's a relatively positive one. I know there are issues and there are concerns, but if you look at a quite difficult and complicated regional picture, the Cayman Islands seems to be in a relatively more positive position, and that's something that clearly we want to continue, but also address risks and address issues that need attention.
And so you'll be monitoring that through the council on a monthly basis?
I think yes, it meets monthly, and absolutely that's the intention. Yeah.
Can I push you on the issue of the constitutional talks? After the passage of the Sanctioned Anti-Money Laundering Bill, which I think was May, the Premier had seemed keen to talk to London very quickly about this, and I know he did to set up the meetings for the actual substantive discussions rather than the peripheral on the outside.
Yeah.
But we understand that there still hasn't been a date set. I mean, I think the leader of the opposition kind of raised it because he obviously does not traditionally go to the JMC, which is coming up at the end of the year, but he had been invited to take part in the constitutional talks. So do we have any idea of when these specific constitutional talks will be set? Because it does seem to have gone on for quite a while now. It's 6 months more.
Well, there's the Cayman Islands government and the Foreign Office are in direct contact about that, and that there are discussions underway. So I can't really give anything more specific at this point. Of course, we have the Joint Ministerial Council coming up in December, so that will clearly be one opportunity where these issues could be discussed. And I think that's really all I can say on that at the moment. Yeah, hello.
Hello, Mr. Roper. My name's Caroline James.
Yes.
I'm with Cayman 27. Very nice to
Right.
meet you. You've obviously had a busy few days where you've been meeting with lots of local legislators.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about some of the issues that you discussed, whether they gave you any advice, and if anything sort of stands out that you weren't expecting, or a little sort of tidbit that you thought, I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, well, I've had some really good discussions, and yes, I've had lots of advice. I think different people have different ideas when it comes to the governor's role. But I mean, at the moment, I've simply been listening to what people have said, and some people have asked me to look into particular issues, and of course, I will do that. But I don't want to enter into specifics. I think one of the important ways the governor can support the local government is to have influence quietly behind the scenes, and I don't want to sort of get on the front foot publicly at this stage about specific issues.
And any advice that they gave you? Avoid the press, maybe, or?
Well, I'm here, so no, I want to be very open, very accessible, and I hope this can be the first in a number of press conferences. I think it's important to also we get the message out about the Governor's Office. I mean, there's a balance of responsibilities in the Constitution, but the Governor's Office is actively involved in a number of initiatives. The helicopter we've spoken about, border and immigration, the new Coast Guard units, the Childline initiative that I flagged on Monday. So I think it's important that we raise awareness of the work that the Governor's Office is doing to support the local government in what is a very extensive extent of local government here. Okay, we have some more people
I've got
joining.
more. Yeah, the Ching Ching wants to know.
Yes, go
Looking
ahead.
further afield, Brexit is looming on the horizon. All right.
You've pinched your colleague's question there.
Brexit is looming on the horizon, and
Yeah.
the UK still doesn't have a deal per se.
Yeah.
Of course, with the UK no longer in the EU, there will be one less voice to protect
Yeah.
countries like Cayman. But quite frankly, we haven't been given a chance to air our concerns about Brexit and the implications it could have for territories like Cayman.
Yeah.
What role will you as governor and your office play
Sure.
to ensure that Cayman is secure in whatever
Yeah.
deal is made?
Yeah, no, that's a really important question, and I absolutely agree that I think the governor and the governor's office have a key role in understanding what is happening in the Brexit negotiations, so we can assist the local government and everybody here understand the implications of that. The government is still confident of getting a deal with our European partners. Negotiations and discussions continue. There have already been discussions with our overseas territories governments about Brexit. The Joint Ministerial Council in December will be another opportunity to talk that through. My sense so far is that there aren't massive implications emerging at the moment. I think actually there's an opportunity. There's a really big opportunity, because as Britain becomes global Britain and we increase our relationships with countries around the world, the Cayman Islands can be a big part of that. And the work on trade and investment, as Cayman Islands looks to, for example, the Far East, Britain and global Britain, that those two things go very closely together. So I think there's an opportunity coming out of this as well.
I wanted to ask something a bit more specific about the distraction that it's caused, because I think we've all seen in the UK that Brexit's just dominated everything for the last 2 years. There's hardly anything else seemingly to happen. So here we have a situation where it does seem like we're struggling to get the UK's attention for these constitutional talks. Do you have any concerns that as we get closer to the possibility of pushing off the edge of the cliff exit, that Cayman, you might even, ringing the FCO, no one's answering because they're just too busy? I mean, does it bother you that Brexit could dominate things and distract away from other things that will be important to your job?
No, I don't think. I think that's sort of overblown, if I may say, in terms of there's no time for anything but Brexit. The business of government goes on. The Chancellor has just passed a budget, and we are in regular contact with the Overseas Territories Directorate. There's a Minister, Lord Ahmed, who is very actively engaged on overseas territories issues. So I don't really recognise that concern. I think it's important that we get a good deal, and I know everyone is working very hard to get a good deal with the European Union.
Could I just ask, do you feel relieved, as some Brits in Cayman anecdotally say, that they're sort of sheltered from Brexit here, that you don't have to sort of talk about it every day and you don't have to worry about any fallout because we're sort of relatively insulated from it?
I mean, it's clearly, well, we're talking about it now, so it's clearly an issue that is uppermost in everybody's mind, and that's natural because this is a major issue facing the UK, and we're running up against the 31 March deadline. So I think it's clearly important, and it's clearly important for the overseas territories as well, and we'll be doing everything we can to make sure that everyone has the information that they need as those negotiations develop.
Yeah, just to clarify a point on Brexit, perhaps, and then come back briefly to the issue of same-sex marriage. The European Court of Human Rights seems to be a misunderstanding here that is part of the split. That still applies to the UK and its territories after Brexit, right?
The European Court of Human Rights, yes, because that's the Council of Europe, so that's not the European Union. So we would still follow European Council of Human Rights laws. There is often a confusion.
Secondly, on that, the European Court of Human Rights is a fairly well-established case precedent that a minimum civil partnerships is expected of territories that are signatories to the ECHR. Now, that could have to be enforced through court, but it seems that I think this is what Wendy was talking about, the result of that case, based on the European Court of Human Rights as established law, is inevitable. So I just have to question why we must wait for somebody to use their own funds to fight a legal case when the European Court of Human Rights has already ruled on this issue.
Well, I think that there is a case before the court, so I think it's only right that we wait to see what the outcome of that is. So I don't really want to add any more to that today, because it is an issue that is before the courts, and we should wait for that outcome, and that's a couple of months away, possibly. So I don't think that's a key issue.
You're happy to wait for that case to conclude?
I think we have to wait for that case to conclude, because that will make a determination about the law, which will then require action depending on what the outcome of the court case is.
Just to be clear, so that I don't misquote you or anything, there is no signal I'm getting from you that you are likely to intervene before the case opens.
No, this issue is before the courts, and we have to wait and see what the outcome of that decision is. I think that's clear. Any final questions?
Yep. Something just in relation to one of your previous postings. You might not be able to say anything. I covered the story quite intensely at the time. In terms of the Algeria hostage crisis, there was a lot of criticism at the time of the Algerian government and the Algerian special forces. I think David Cameron and some other leaders criticised their lack of discussion, the lack of involvement that foreign forces were allowed. I wonder if you had found that in your experience, and whether there was anything that you drew from that or will be drawing from that in your current posting.
Yeah. Well, I led the UK response to the In Amenas crisis, which was a terrible tragedy. I mean, 6 British nationals lost their lives. About 40 terrorists came across from Libya and attacked the BP and Statoil site, and 35 foreign hostages did lose their lives, but 800 people got out safely. Certainly the Algerian government was very clear that they would not negotiate with terrorists, so they did take a very firm position. My role as ambassador in Algeria was to speak to the Algerians regularly to emphasize our position, which was that everything possible should be done to protect the lives of the foreign hostages. So there was a very regular dialogue about that, and there was subsequently an inquiry in the UK. So I think there are publicly available documents about that.
So you found them sort of willing to engage in dialogue, but perhaps a little bit resistant to actually receiving troops or interference from foreign governments? Or?
I mean, certainly Algeria has a very strong and clear position on national sovereignty and non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. So there was no realistic hope of any country being able to persuade them to allow foreign troops into the country. It was very much for them to deal with it, and that was their view from the beginning. And you have to respect the sovereign country's wishes in that situation.
And we had another question from the school kids who were writing into us the other day, and they just asked, obviously you've been posted all around the world in your career. So far to date, what's been your favourite place that you've been posted?
Well, of course, the Cayman Islands has to be the answer I give to that, but I've only been here a relatively short period of time. But I've enjoyed all my postings, actually, and I think as a diplomat, what I found hugely motivating is having the opportunity to really get under the skin of a country, understand its culture, understand its people, and then be able to advise London based on that knowledge. And I'm excited about having the opportunity here in the Cayman Islands to really talk to people, understand the issues on people's minds, and then hope to make a positive contribution to the security and prosperity of everybody on these islands.
Sorry.
I think we've got just one more. Yeah.
It's not clear, and I know that people have been asking about it, and you did say 6 to 9 months. There is a recruitment process going on, so is that actually happening in England now? Has the job been advertised? Like, how does it work? Because I'm still a bit confused about how this process of being interviewed for the job of a governor works.
Well, under the Constitution, it is the Queen who appoints the governor on the recommendation of the Foreign Secretary. So because of the circumstances of my arrival, given the withdrawal of my successor, I have been appointed to be here for a minimum of 6 to 9 months. But as I said, I very much want to be here on a permanent basis. So there will be a process in London over the next few weeks. And I hope very much that a decision is reached very quickly. But I can't really comment any more on that process, and it wouldn't be right to do so at the present time.
So it's not necessarily going to be like an ad in the London Evening Standard, Governor wanted Cayman Islands, and then you have to go like fill your CV in.
No. These are. It's an internal Foreign Office process, and an internal Foreign Office process is underway, but we hope it will be completed as soon as possible.
And just pushing a little more, ballpark figure of time. How long do you think this whole process might take?
It's very difficult to put a specific time on it, but I hope very much this is resolved in the next couple of months. But we can't give a precise time at this point. But I'm here for a minimum of 6 to 9 months. We hope a decision is taken well before that point.
So we could know in a couple of months you're going to be here for the full 3-year contract.
I would certainly hope that is the case, but I can't say any more at the moment. Good. Okay, we'll take one last question.
Ian from Pink Duck Publishing.
So from
Pink Duck Publishing.
Yeah.
What would you say are your greatest accomplishments to date?
In my career as a diplomat?
Right.
I mean, I think the Algeria crisis and handling the UK response to that, it was described at the time as a textbook response in terms of how you deal with it. I was able very quickly to get down to the site where the attack was happening. I was the only ambassador who actually went down to In Amenas. I was able to procure a helicopter from a private sector contact and fly down there. So I was on the scene, able to support British nationals who were being evacuated via the airport. This is a tragic situation, and it could have been a lot worse. But I think, in terms of how that was handled, that was certainly one of the sort of proudest moments of my life. And I was awarded an OBE by the Queen for my work in that. I was also caught up in the Iraq, the first Gulf War, so that was also a very difficult situation. I was a young diplomat as vice consul in Kuwait, so again I was supporting British nationals in Kuwait under Iraqi occupation. So again, a very difficult time, but you get a lot of satisfaction from being able to help people who are in distress when you know that you've helped them get out of the country. Okay. Good. Well, thank you all very much. Very good to see you, and I hope we can do this again sometime if you wish to.